Kolkata from IACS, and then speaking on Twist-3, TMD, PDS, and beam single string asymmetries.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am Kolkata from Indian Association for the School of Physical Science. And today I will talk about Twist-3 PDFs and beam single spin asymmetries. So it will get 12-minute roller coaster of particle physics. So let's start. So the rough outline of my talk is I will discuss transformer dependent acceleration and beam single spin asymmetry and two models of proton, that is integer one type of model and quad type model. So this topic is based on my two works and one of them is published and submitted. So let's start from very basic, that what is elementary particle physics, the whole of elementary particle physics. So the main goal is to answer the two questions, that is what is matter made of at the fundamental level and how do they interact with each other, because interaction is essentially very much important to study the bound states as well. So let's start, and I will talk about mainly deep inelastic scattering and semi-inclusive deep inelastic scattering. And so let's discuss IACS process. So basically this is an electron is okay. So the IACS process is basically very simple. That is electron and proton basically they are scattered. The scattering process electron and proton, and final step we get electron and a bunch of other states that will be presented by X. And this is a very high energy process because the scale of the process is very large, and for such high energy process we can actually express the cross section of the process in terms of the electronic tensor and electronic tensor. This electronic tensor is basically encodes all the information about this electronic particle that is well known from QED, and this hadronic tensor is WED, and it basically encodes the all information about this particle, the proton particle. But proton is a composite particle, it is not an elementary particle, so basically it is an unknown thing, this WED, and we can basically write this for unpolarized state in terms of structure functions. So this function basically encodes all the information about this particle. Now, for polarized state, we can basically express this WED in terms of something called work correlator, and which can be given by this expression. This all comes from field theory, and we can basically expand this correlator in terms of some functions which are known as the PDFs or pattern distribution functions. So at the leading order approximation, we get three functions there, the red ones. So these are called the pattern distribution functions. Or more precisely, if we integrate over this k minus, so k minus is the, so k is the core vector corresponding to the momentum of the quartz. So if we integrate over this k minus, we get transformer divided PDF. Basically, the PDF will depend on the collinear momentum as well as the transformer. And if we further integrate over k part, we will get the collinear PDF. So now move on to the semi-inclusive IACS. So in this process, it is similar to IACS process. In addition to it, we are basically detecting a hadron in the final state, and for that, that's why it is a two-scale process, unlike the IACS process. And similarly, we can also express for this process WB as in terms of the quad-quad coordinator. And we can similarly expand this quad-quad coordinator, but here I have expanded till the second order. first order and this is the second order. This is the next to leading order connection. And these two functions are the Twist-2, means Twist is basically the, you can say, order. So these are the leading order function, pattern distribution functions, and these are the next to leading order pattern distribution functions. Now discuss about collinear and TMD separation scheme. So basically when a virtual photon is basically interacting with proton, we can behind and we can view it like that, that it what is interacting with the virtual photon, and then the cross section of this process we will take and integrate over all such possibilities with the distribution function, pattern distribution function, then we will get the cross section of the whole process. So this is the collinear separation where we use collinear PDFs, and in TMD separation scheme we use TMD. Now go to something called beam single spin asymmetry. So this is a very interesting thing. This is a specific type of IACS. In that case, we take longitudinally polarized electron beam with helicity lambda, and we take the unpolarized hadron to be the target. So what we are calculating, basically we are calculating the beam single spin asymmetry. This is the asymmetry between the cross section with helicity +1 and -1. So the cross sections are not equal. So this is a non-trivial thing, and this ALU basically encodes the asymmetry, and this is experimentally calculated by different groups like Harris and plans from the for different hadronic processes. So and this ALU can be given by this structure function, and these structure functions can be written using the TMD separation scheme that I have told right now. And importantly, these two functions are the leading order pattern distribution functions, and these red ones are these three, means next to leading order. So we need these functions to describe the asymmetry, beam single spin asymmetry. Now there are some models we need to basically calculate these periods. Why? Because these Twist-2 periods, so that these are experimentally available, means we can treat these functions and get the functional form, and but these red ones are not available from experiment. So we need to rely on some model of program. So basically we are considering spectral quad dipole model. In this model, basically the target is basically a single quad, and the other two quad basically we are taking to be a bound state dipole, and there is no dynamical ionic degrees of freedom in this model. So it is a simplistic model, and in that model there are various works, and they have calculated the asymmetries, and these black points are the experimental points, and these red and blue ones are the model predicted ones. And similarly, we have done the IACS calculation for IACS experiment, that is a future collider experiment, and we have predicted this IACS for bipolar production for IACS. And we are now doing the quad-target model. This is also simplistic model of proton basically, but it has ionic degrees of freedom, dynamical ionic degrees of freedom. So it enables us to calculate the one distribution as well. And the Twist-2 distributions, so these are the some of the correlator calculations of this model. And Twist-2 distributions are already been calculated by AACS study 2007. So basically we are now doing, and we have done it actually, submitted. So we have calculated the TMD distribution in quad-target model, and these are the functional forms we have obtained. And basically, and note that these are T-event distribution in time reversal events, and there are other distributions as well, which are T-pod, and you notice that these T-pod and E basically, this E function, they are basically goes to the IACS expression. So we need G-pod as well, but there is some issue with this calculation, and it is not done yet. There are some divergences, and we are working on it. So in summary, we know that there are limited availability of Twist-3 distributions, but Twist-2 distributions we know from experience. So we have to rely on some model to calculate these Twist-3 distributions, and from that we can predict IACS calculation already.
Questions for you? Yeah, yes, sir.
Slide Tishan diagram. Yeah. Here, what you said, first one is the electron proton scattering. This is because this is Tishan diagram, and there it is EE, that is electronic channel. Here, this is electronic channel, and this is ES going to this. I was a bit surprised why you used for electronic tensor W mu nu. Mu nu is actually weak interaction tensor, right? Asymptotic tensor. But anyway, that's
I have used the convention from Haldane Martin. There it's giving
okay, Haldane Martin. And your electronic tensor, I mean, how it looks like? Tell me.
Okay, with respect to the moment of Q, sorry, the K, K prime, there are some other, and metric is also there.
How it should be, what is the speed? Like mu, W mu, something like that? Because this is, what is that? It is, this is UCD you are doing, right? But that one is
Yes, this is
interaction
QED
part.
This is QED part.
That is the QED part, right? Then when you write the electronic tensor, then how it should look like? Then mu some W mu.
No, there is no derivative. There is no derivative.
There is no derivative.
Only it depends on the momentum. They are dot products of momentum and
The same for W mu nu, right? Yeah, the confusion becomes
yes,
actually
yes, it is similar, but we don't know the functional form of this thing. So these are the unknown things. These are structure forms. So we have to get it from the experimental data.
There is one more doubt because there are too many things I have to. Just towards the end, there is a Lagrangian road which is no. Here too you have this in that Lagrangian too I was here.
Psi is basically the
That is the Dirac.
not of the product.
Yeah, Dirac Lagrangian, that is for fermions. Now N is what mass? N is the
It is
mass.
the proton.
Oh, I see. Oh, because this is fermion, okay. Then the next one is plus psi bar I now mu d mu.
Not the quad. Psi. Small
Oh,
psi
you
is
have to
not
write the
quad.
Lagrangian for separately. I mean, proton contains two parts. So at the quark level, I mean, if you write down your capital D, this covariant derivative contains all the gauge interaction that I understand, and then NQ. But why you are writing proton
The
separately?
interaction terms are here. Last.
Question is that the small n is mass of the quad, capital M is mass of the proton.
Yes.
What he is saying that means because the protons also have quarks. So what is the reason that you are writing the quark interaction differently and the proton component differently? What is the reason for that?
That's all.
Yeah, check.
Yeah.
Unclear about the mass capital. I don't think that's the
As far as I know that this is for the proton part, the quad, and this side one.
No, but here you see your interaction psi 5, right? So mass interaction 3 by 2, 3 plus 1, 4. Okay. 5 is the scalar, is it?
I have one more question. The Abhijit can have the last question.
Yeah, so you said one thing that we can visualize a photon interacting with a proton as a photon interacting with a quark, right? In a picture you said.
Not like that.
Yeah, yeah.
This one. Oh, okay.
Next one, yeah.
No. Proton is a extended object, right? So it has some consequence. So when a high energy proton, virtual proton is interacting with proton, so we can approximate this as, means we can view this as at high energy that a quark is interacting with the virtual proton, and then we would calculate the total cross section of this process. We take all such processes with the distribution function and integrated sum.
Yes, but a proton is created with two quarks with 2:1 ratio, right? So there are two types of quarks. So
Yeah, we are taking sum over all the quark flavors.
okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That will end the session.